John, you want to kick us off as,
Sure.
as the board president?
Now that we've defined that, right? Okay. So, welcome to our annual meeting of the Vermont Employee Ownership Center. My name is John Durgan. I'm the board president and a 14-year plus veteran employee owner at King Arthur Baking in Norwich, Vermont. So, you know, we at the VEOC believe that when companies are employee owned, everybody prospers. So, and what does that really mean? Because you hear these things, but what really does it mean? So I was trying to figure out how to convey that the best way. And what I came up with was to actually look at our mission statement, because it's right there, the first half of it. And I'm going to read it. The Vermont Employee Ownership Center is a statewide nonprofit whose mission is to promote and foster employee ownership in order to broaden capital ownership, deepen employee participation, retain jobs, and increase living standards for working families and stabilize communities. You know, anyone who really isn't familiar with ESOPs or employee-owned companies, but an ESOP at the very heart really is a retirement vehicle. And it works very well. There's some interesting facts about ESOPs, and I have just a couple here that I want to share with you. ESOPs tend to offer rates of returns close to 2 times higher than most 401ks. And it's a great way for employee owners to build wealth. And one of the ways they do that is to stay. The longer you stay, the more you build, the more you have within the ESOP itself. So why do people stay in employee-owned companies? Well, typically, employees are more likely to stay with an ESOP, not just because their retirement plan is tied directly, but ESOPs have shown to have higher retention. They're better and able to retain people for a lot of reasons. For me personally, it's not just the retirement part of it, even though that's super important, but it's the cultural part and the people I work with, and having that feeling that everybody's working together for each other and not just for themselves. And I've worked in a lot of different companies over the years, and even though I've worked for some fantastic ones, it's a different feeling. And unless you have been involved with something like that, it's kind of hard to explain. But the job satisfaction rating of ESOP companies for employee owners is way higher than it is for most quote normal companies. And you know, we can define what a normal company is, but in my opinion, it's not a company owned by the employees. Okay, there's different ways that great companies help retain their employees and make them feel inclusive. But with an employee-owned company, Steve Voigt years ago said it, and I've repeated this in the past. He was a former CEO of King Arthur Flour at the time. He would say, I'm not working for me, I'm working for Beth down the line so that she can have a good retirement too. So everybody pulling together and working is really how that culture gets created. You know, the other thing is ESOPs help keep companies in local hands and help build strong communities. In our state and in any state, that is so important. You know, when you hear of companies that are getting purchased by larger companies, and yeah, we'll keep them in the community, and then you find out that they're cutting jobs and they're just leaving a ghost of what was there and moving it to another state for lots of other reasons. ESOPs help prevent that. A good, strong company in a local community, ESOPs drive that all the way. That's just a few of the facts. There's a whole ton of them. Interesting one is that ESOPs tend to perform better in downturn economies. Luckily, you know, we haven't hit that yet, and hopefully we won't. But in the past, you know, in 2008, for those who remember when we had, I call it a recession more than anything else, we did well. Most ESOP companies on a national basis did much better than their counterparts. So that's something to consider.
All right, so moving on now to annual report to the community. So our bylaws, say that each year we should give a report to the community on what it is that we've been up to and what impact we've had as a nonprofit organization. But yeah, so I'll echo first of all, John, just thanking the board and the staff for really, this organization is in a really good position because it has a very sort of attentive and thoughtful and highly skilled board that, having served on a number of nonprofit boards, definitely has become my kind of gold standard of relative functionality, because there's a range. And so and then the staff, our staff kind of has when I started, it was Don and I both working, I think myself working 20 hours a week and Don working 25 hours a week out of Don's attic. So I drank a lot of tea. His wife Christina would sometimes have cookies that had lots of fiber in them. They were quite tasty. Those were the early days, and we kind of were really operating in a very lean, sort of shoestring way, but having a high impact for what we were able to do with the resources. And over the past 8.5, 9 years I've been with the organization, it has expanded and grown and gotten more complex, and I think built its reputation within the Vermont the Vermont and economic development community, the national employee ownership world, a number of things where it's really developed. And so, as Don mentioned, he is on the cusp of retirement. He'll be his last day as a currently very part-time staffer will be on the 3rd of February. So definitely, kind of have been thinking a lot about the legacy, and we do a lot of ownership succession work, talking to business owners about what is it like to hand off and depart. And now we've been kind of going through that internally, which hits a little bit different, I think. So I don't know, Don, is there anything you'd want to kind of share at this moment as you reflect on 20-something years of this?
Strangely enough, I'm not prepared to speak to that. I mean, it's been a great ride. We've had great people on the board. Even the preceding steering committee, we had a great group of people. Part of it was because of Steve McGowan's connections, bringing in Cindy, and we had people from the city, and it was strong from the beginning. The initial conferences that happened were really exciting, and we got off to a great start. We had some really great years when we had funding. We had some lean years when we didn't, and staffing changes accordingly. But things are going really well now, and it seems like we're on a pretty much steady trajectory upward. And I think it's largely because of Mr. Kropp. He's got so much energy, and he's so intelligent, and he's just a great meeting runner and organizer, and he's fantastic. So I found him. That's my legacy.
Thank you, Don. So beyond Don's legacy and departure, kind of other things in 2022 to highlight. After several years of being online for the Vermont Employee Ownership Conference, the year before the pandemic hit, we had our highest attendance ever. So we were kind of on this very significant upward trajectory. We kind of did 2 years of online, sort of still sort of probably like 175 to 200 range of folks being reached, which felt still pretty good given the circumstances. And then last year we returned to in person, and we're back well over 200. So it feels like that as a kind of touch point for the Vermont employee ownership community, as a place to gather, learn, celebrate, is really kind of continuing to be an important part of our work. And we're now in the midst of thinking about that for 2023. In terms of outreach and communications, Ryan joined us at the end of 2021, and really kind of got his feet under him communications wise pretty quickly. So we've gone from occasional newsletters that happened when I needed to say something on a whiteboard template that hadn't changed in a decade to something that's much more intentional and comprehensive, and that's been hugely helpful. Similarly, kind of approaches, having more intentional approaches to our social media communications, and also outreach to really finding all the different communities that we need to sort of be educating folks about employee ownership. So one big example of that was reaching college students. We've always tried to present to classes, and would go to maybe 1 or 2 classes a year. Ryan pulled together a grand list of all possible professors, emailed them, and got me, I think, 8 gigs for the fall semester. So a lot of students were reached. Folks who are potentially interested in joining as for the internship, which we'll be posting soon, and other things like that. But really, and similarly with our outreach to professional firms and other things, we've been able to sort of like hit our audience a lot deeper than we have been. So in terms of conversion work, we one thing that's really kind of was an impressive thing, and for folks who are attending, we'll send out a kind of a paper, or not paper, PDF, fake paper, kind of report that Ryan assembled, that has some of these statistics in it. But 2022 was the best year ever for our organization in terms of people reaching out to inquire about employee ownership. We had 60 companies reach out over the course of the year, and that's been had been growing steadily, but really the last maybe 2 to 3 years has been starting to accelerate significantly. And I see the increased communications presence is definitely a significant factor in that. So when in terms of how we work with companies that are pursuing employee ownership, there's kind of two paths. For the companies that are going the employee stock ownership plan direction, we'll do some education to the owner, help them kind of get an initial sense of, could this be a possibility? And then it's a technical enough thing that we'll generally hand them off to the professionals who will go kind of into the deeper dive and for feasibility studies and other things like that. For the smaller companies that are pursuing the cooperative approach, we'll oftentimes work kind of more intensively with them, sign a technical assistance contract and go to steering committee meetings and other things like that to help work them through the process. So we've worked with a number of steering committees in the last year, including Austin Design, which we'll hear from shortly, and have a good number of folks who basically have been sitting on waiting for the year-end close and the 2022 numbers to come in, and then getting ready to start the engine and move forward. So we're really looking forward to what will hopefully be a busy year on that front. And then in terms of startup work, we traditionally hear from a few folks who are interested in starting a company kind of from scratch. The number of folks who have been inquiring on that front as well does feel like it's been going up recently. And we've been kind of happy to have kind of more recently the kind of a referral relationship with some folks who are doing have some USDA funding to do startup work through Cooperative Development Institute, to collaborate with them on these companies that are pursuing the startup route. So that's been a great way to also kind of manage our capacity as we've been seeing kind of more folks coming into the pipeline. And so in the year we saw 3 companies convert to employee ownership, 2 worker cooperatives and 1 ESOP. And at this point I'll kind of transition over to the story. So Shami, welcome, and thanks for taking some time to join us at the annual meeting, and just kind of share a little bit about Austin Design's journey to employee ownership and background and other things like that.
Great. All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, very good.
Okay, great. So yeah, my name is Shami Holshoe. I'm the office manager here at Austin Design Cooperative. We are an architecture firm located in Brattleboro, Vermont. And with the help of VEOC, we successfully transitioned from a single owner to a worker-owned cooperative model this past fall. It's been 4 months since the employees bought the company, and we're really excited to keep moving forward together. So I'll just share a little bit of background on our business, who we are, what we do, and why we chose the cooperative model. So Austin Design was started by Bill Austin in Coleraine, Massachusetts in 1993 or 92. And the firm has always been relatively small. I would say for the past decade, we've hovered around a staff of 10, sometimes a little less. And we work on a mix of residential and commercial projects, whether that is someone wanting to renovate their house, add a bedroom, make something more accessible, or new construction on larger builds. In the past, we did a lot of luxury homes. We have been moving away from that and doing more projects in affordable multifamily housing. For example, we have a senior housing complex down in Sunderland, Massachusetts that is almost finished with construction. And then we're starting some affordable studio apartments in Amherst, and we've got a bunch more in the works. And our big niche is breweries. We worked on The Alchemist and Lawson's Finest Liquids there in Vermont, or here in Vermont. And down in Massachusetts, we've worked on Northampton Brewery, Treehouse Brewing, and we've got clients spread all over New England and beyond. And it's just something that we really enjoy is beer and architecture. We think they go very well together. So after 30 years at the helm of the business, Bill Austin was ready to retire. And of the 10 employees, there was no single person in the firm who wanted to take over the responsibility of being a single owner. And we couldn't get it to just 2 or 3 partners either. So we started looking at, we still want to keep working together. We really enjoy what we do. So how do we keep doing that without Bill? And that brought forward the worker cooperative model. Most of the team had been working together for 6 to 10 years, some of us for about 2 years. That's including me. I just joined a little over 2 years ago. So yeah, the idea of forming the cooperative came very naturally to our group. The business was already run in a very collaborative spirit. For many years, Bill had included the whole team in big picture decisions. I mentioned that we started out in Massachusetts, so deciding to open a second office in Vermont was something that he brought to the whole group. Big picture things like what is our mission, what kind of projects do we want to work on, all of those things were discussed together. And more recently, he started sharing more of the financial picture of the company so that we could start to learn, how things ran and where the money goes and what we need to watch out for. So in the fall of 2020, I was hired to help Bill step back from his admin duties. So at that point, he took a more passive role in the company. He'd bring in some clients and pass them off to the team. He'd join a weekly staff meeting, but otherwise he tried to leave things up to us to start learning how to ride our bike. It was a 2-year training wheels period, I would say. So then we got in touch with VEOC. We attended your annual conference with workshops and everything just to get our feet wet and see what was up. And then we met with Matt Kropp, and he really put the wheels in motion for us. And VEOC has just been instrumental throughout the entire conversion process. So thank you guys so much for all that you do. So yeah, Matt provided us with guides on starting and running a co-op. He ran some workshops with us. He connected us with other co-ops so we could ask them what their experience was like. We did a bylaws drafting session, and he connected us with the attorneys and everybody that we would need for every step of the way, and eventually Cooperative Fund of the Northeast. I see that Vikas is with us. He was instrumental to our process in getting a loan. So hi, Vikas, and a shout out to CFNE. So yeah, we worked with Lynn Silva of the Silva Group to do evaluation of the company. And then with that, we worked with Matt to work on our offer framework for buying the business. And we worked with attorneys to incorporate and to draft up all of those sale documents, and VEOC and Matt were the ones that put us in touch with all of those folks. So thank you again for all of that help. And we really felt that we were in good hands every step of the way. I think it probably took us a little over a year from seriously investigating this option for us and then actually buying the business. It was a long process, but we learned a lot along the way, and we're so grateful for the help that you guys gave us. On September 7th, we officially bought the business and changed the name to Austin Design Cooperative to tell our clients in the world that this is what we're going for. And our next goal is going to be B Corp certification. That's something that we're very excited about. It's going to take a little while to meet those qualifications, and there's a waiting period, but we're very excited to move forward towards that. And yeah, we couldn't have done it without your help. And so on behalf of the team here at Austin Design Cooperative, thank you very much for your guidance and your support.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to share your little story with us, Shami.
Yeah.
And yeah, I will say that with the one of the things with the co-op conversions is oftentimes the question of, there's a question of what's the culture like at the company, and how much mutual trust is there among folks. Can they imagine owning this thing with their coworkers? And in terms of there's a huge variability in the different types of companies we talk to, but I think Austin Design went in many ways relatively quickly compared to others once you decided to do it, because that group was really I think there was a solid sense of trust and mutual respect and the desire to do this together. So I think when you converted, oftentimes it's maybe like, oh, if like half to 2/3 of the employees join as initially as employee owners, that feels pretty good. And your group, it seemed like it was all or almost all of the employees wanted to be owners from the get-go. So that was a very exciting kind of thing about your particular experience, I think, from my perspective.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have a question for you, Shammy.
sure.
John Durgan here. Do you find that you're getting sort of that culture that you're trying to build? Do you see it starting to happen now? Are you starting to feel like owners, all of you? Do you have sort of that focus?
Yeah, so one thing that we did was we formed subcommittees to help divvy up the work of admin. So we have one group that does, operations. What are our policies? What's our day-to-day look like? We have another group that works on finances. We look at that monthly and then present a little snapshot to the rest of the team. So through those little divvying up of tasks, we share that workload, and more of us are involved. So yeah, I feel like we're really taking on that sense of ownership, and yeah, we're having fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions for Shammy before?
Or anyone want to put it in the chat if you have a question, right? And we can read it for you.
Mhm.
Shammy, was there anything surprising to you during the process of converting?
I don't know. I feel like Matt and all of the other advisors really held our hand along the way. So I never felt like a fish out of water, even though it was new, new territory. Yeah.
Then my follow-up is, what was the hardest thing to decide as a group?
Ooh. I don't know. We're very fortunate to all get along and really collaborate with each other. So I'm not sure that we really faced a lot of difficulties.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question to approach every few years.
Yeah. I think, well, I guess maybe the answer to that was we're a pretty casual group. So having to observe all the formalities of, meeting minutes and bylaws drafting and all of that. Those, I wouldn't necessarily say they were hurdles, but they were challenges for our group to be like, oh, okay, we really do have to sit down and do this like the right way.
Yeah, we will thank ourselves later for
Yes.
having done this now.
Yes, we're very grateful for the attorneys that helped us get those things set up. Actually, Joseph Andriano, who helped do our incorporation, he ran a corporate 101 session for us to help walk us through all of those things that we would need to do as a corporation. So we really appreciated that. That was very helpful for us.
Yeah, okay, there it is. For folks more in the financial change, yep. There.
I wouldn't say that financial motivation was the reason for the change to worker co-op. Really, we just wanted to keep working together. We still really loved our projects and our team. So the fact that we'll end up with patronage is a great bonus, but I wouldn't say it was our primary motivator. Yeah.
This is great because this is really what I was saying earlier. This is kind of what we're all about, and you're a prime example of the sort of the fruits of everybody's labor to get to, including your own, to get to the point where you are right now. And you should be congratulated on that. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding in the end. And I can only see good things coming for you folks.
Yeah, us too. We're very optimistic.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story at our annual meeting. So and hopefully we will be seeing some of you all at the conference in June, but also a lot more kind of examples of this kind of thing in the next year or two. Looking to the future then, right? We've kind of made it through 2022. We're looking at 2023 now. I think one big thing to share for us is with Don's departure, we had really a good think through of like what did we need, as we shift into this kind of post Don era of the company or the organization. And we ended up deciding, all right, we want to look and see if we can find someone to come in half-time to and as we're thinking about the position, we're like, we're a small nonprofit. Honestly, what we need is a generalist, right? Someone who has passion for the mission and has a lot of kind of different relevant skills. So we kind of threw out the fishing line and saw who's coming up and nibbling, and had a really great pool of candidates, and really grateful that we ended up with Annie on staff. So one of the things that we're kind of jumping into, kind of looking into the next year is, building some kind of like new and more intensive systems around how we kind of, track all these new people coming in, how we sort of route people through, kind of both making ourselves more efficient at doing that so we can handle more the greater number of inquiries that are coming in. And then also, thinking about kind of how to deepen some of our engagement, and that beyond the just kind of like, how we do the work, but also kind of what we do in our work. What are ways to deepen the ways that we engage with existing employee-owned companies? Both, we do some stuff that's kind of some work that's things like connecting folks, or there's an HR peer group that meets monthly, and the Employee Owners of Vermont group, and some Employee Ownership Month and Co-op Month celebrations, and so we definitely do that stuff, and we're trying to think about what are the kind of ways that we can deepen and expand on that, alongside of the making sure that the path to employee ownership is clear and relatively easy to get down. One other thing that I think is, as we're looking to this next year, is is education and awareness has always been a very key part of our work. But there's also other barriers to getting to employee ownership, and some of them are financial. And so we're starting to see, I think, after many years of talking and planning, some more opportunities to actually have kind of programs that can lower those barriers. So we were able to, last year, we received this kind of earmark funds through Senator Sanders' office, congressional designated spending, I think is the technical term. But that gives us a pot of money that we can use to support employee groups in things like having kind of an independent valuator sort of review the valuation from the buy side of the perspective, or provide matching funds for an owner who wants to do a feasibility study, or other things like that. We have a pot that we can do up to $5,000 kind of per deal to sort of help defray some of these expenses and make it easier to do the exploration and decide whether or not you actually want to kind of move forward. And we're also looking at some other possibly bigger sources of resources, particularly the State Small Business Credit Initiative, which is a federal program that's going to be run through this through the Small Business Development Centers. We'll hopefully also be able to kind of help support folks who are looking at this and are like, oh, I'd like to do a feasibility study, but $5,000 or $10,000 really might make a significant difference in my ability to do it or not. So I think it's something where these sorts of resources, as we can kind of help orient them and orient people to them as they come online, or something that we can go beyond the sort of low-hanging fruit of the people who are most culturally aligned with this, or most kind of know someone who's done it, or those other things that make people kind of highly motivated to say, yes, I want to do this. But there's a lot of folks who are like, oh, looking at their options and trying to figure it out. And there's awareness plus resources, I think, is something that can really take us to the next level. And those resources seem to be more and more coming into place. So I'm excited to see what happens on that front in the coming year. And then a little longer term, and mention this for those who were at the board meeting, we had some discussion of this, but after many years of it being introduced, there's some federal funding through, it's called the Work Act, was passed at the end of last year. That the funding won't start until 2020, the end of 2024, but it's a program that will provide 5 years of federal funding to state employee ownership programs. So we are, I think that this is something where there's still a lot of kind of figuring out exactly what that looks like in terms of scale and scope and limitations on that. But I think there's a real opportunity for us to both expand our own capacity and build some really solid partnerships with other organizations to further help kind of spread the word and support people as they walk this path. So we'll be certainly in the coming year be having conversations at the board level, and also sort of engaging with the broader employee ownership community to really try to think through what are the highest impact ways that, if we are able to bring some more resources to the table, for us to be doing our work to really intensify the growth and strength of employee ownership in Vermont. So I think that there's as we look to this year and the coming few years, there's a lot of opportunities, and we're coming into it, even though without Dawn on staff, with a strong team and with a strong base of resources, that we can really I think make some big strides in the coming year. And I will conclude my looking to the future just with the reminder: June 1st is our annual conference. You all should come. And you know, and let people in your networks know that it's happening. And if they are interested in exploring employee ownership, that is one of the best ways to get a, you know, a one-day crash course in you know, what that looks like. So, you know, please mark your calendars and spread the word.